I've been thinking that some of you might be working alone during night shifts, and I just wanted to remind you to take care of yourselves out there. Stay safe, and know that I appreciate every single one of you. I used to work the night shift at a gas station off Highway 97, just south of La Pine, Oregon. This was in 2016. It was a boring job, honestly. The kind where I'd be half asleep behind the counter, scrolling through my phone, just waiting for my shift to end. The only time it got busy was during the summer when people were driving through for camping trips. But by September, things had slowed down a lot. That night was a Tuesday, September 13th. It was cold, barely 40 degrees, and the highway was dead. The last customer I had seen was a guy getting coffee at around 9:30. After that, nothing. Just me, the hum of the fluorescent lights, and the occasional sound of a car speeding past. At 10:45, a truck pulled in. A black Chevy Silverado, early 2000s model. The headlights flickered for a second before shutting off. I wasn't really paying attention at first. Just assumed it was another late-night traveler stopping for gas. But something about it felt off. The guy who got out was tall, skinny, maybe late 40s. Had that look like he'd been living out of his truck for a while. Greasy hair, sunken eyes. He walked into the store, hands in his jacket pockets, head down. When he got to the counter, he asked for cigarettes. The way he spoke was weird, slow, like he was either exhausted or strung out on something. As I rang him up, I noticed his hands were shaking. Not just a little, like full-on trembling. His nails were dirty, dark under them, looked like dried blood. Then I noticed something else. Through the reflection in the store's glass doors, I saw a second person in the truck. A woman, barely visible through the windshield. She was sitting in the passenger seat, completely still, facing forward. But her mouth was moving, like she was talking, or trying to. I kept my face neutral, acting like I didn't see anything. But my brain was racing. Something wasn't right. The guy didn't seem nervous. He was calm, too calm. When I handed him his change, he just stood there for a second, watching me. Then he asked if I was working alone. I lied, said my manager was in the back. He didn't react, just nodded and walked out. I waited until he got into his truck before exhaling. My heart was pounding. I went behind the counter and watched the security monitor. The truck's brake lights were on, but it wasn't moving. Then I saw it. The driver's door opened again. He wasn't getting out. He was leaning into the truck, talking to the woman. She was shaking her head, fast, and then she did something that made my stomach drop. She pushed the door open and tumbled onto the pavement. She was barefoot, wearing just a torn tank top and shorts. It was 40 degrees outside. Her legs were scraped up, bruised. She tried to run, but the guy grabbed her by the hair and yanked her back. My hands were already under the counter, pressing the silent alarm. Then I picked up the phone and dialed 911. As soon as I did, the guy looked up, not at me, at the security camera. For a second, he just stared. Then he let go of the woman, jumped into the truck, and floored it. The woman barely managed to move out of the way before he was gone. She ran inside, shaking, crying, kept whispering that she needed help. I locked the doors and tried to keep her calm until the cops showed up. Felt like forever, but they got there in less than 10 minutes. Turns out she had been missing for 3 days. She had been abducted while jogging in Redmond and kept in the guy's truck the whole time, tied up in the back seat. The cops found his truck abandoned about 20 miles south the next morning. But he was gone. They never caught him. And as far as I know, he's still out there. I used to work as a night janitor in this office building in downtown Toronto. It was at 177 Wellington Street West, right in the financial district. I've been doing it for years, just me, my cart, and a whole lot of empty hallways. Most nights were completely uneventful, just a routine. But what happened on June 21st, 2018 was different. It was a Thursday night, and I had started my shift at 10 p.m. Like always, this building had 20 floors, and I worked my way from the top down. By around 2:30 a.m., I was on the 14th floor taking a quick break. There was a small break room with a fridge and a microwave, and I was sitting there scrolling through my phone while sipping on a vending machine coffee. I always had the building security feed pulled up on my phone. It wasn't like I was expecting anything, but it gave me peace of mind since usually I was alone in the entire floor, although there are like 8 of us janitors working separately. It had around 40 cameras covering the lobbies, hallways, stairwells, and elevators. That night, I glanced at the screen and saw something that made me stop. There was movement on the 12th floor. That was weird because I knew for a fact that floor was supposed to be empty. The last employees had left at 8 p.m. and nobody else had come in. I double-checked the building logs. No cleaners were assigned there except me, and I hadn't gotten to that floor yet. I switched to a different camera to get a better look. A man in a dark hoodie was just standing there, near one of the cubicles. He wasn't moving much, just standing still, like he was listening for something. I stared at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. I figured maybe it was an employee who stayed late, but something felt really off. The way he was just standing there, half hidden behind a cubicle wall, wasn't normal. I tapped on the radio clipped to my belt and called downstairs to the security desk. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. I looked back at the screen. The guy wasn't by the cubicles anymore. He had moved, but I hadn't seen him move. He was closer to the camera now, just a few feet away from it, standing near the main walkway. His head was slightly tilted down so I couldn't see his face. Then he turned. He looked directly into the camera. He lifted his hand. He was holding a knife. I felt my entire body tense up. This wasn't an employee. This wasn't some random guy who got lost in the building. This was someone who wasn't supposed to be there, and he was armed. I heard footsteps, not on the screen, in real life, right outside the break room. I froze. The break room door was slightly open, and I could see the hallway through the gap. The footsteps were slow and deliberate. My heart was pounding. I moved as quietly as I could and ducked into the storage closet across from the break room. It was a tight space filled with mop buckets and cleaning supplies, but I squeezed inside and shut the door just enough to leave a crack open. I could hear breathing, heavy, controlled. The footsteps stopped right outside the break room. I was gripping my radio so hard my fingers hurt, but I didn't dare press the button. My phone was still in my pocket, but I didn't want to risk pulling it out. The guy was too close. Then I heard the doorknob twist. He was checking rooms. I held my breath, pressing myself into the corner of the closet. The door creaked open just a little. Then my radio crackled. A voice came through, loud. It was security. As soon as the sound filled the hallway, I heard fast footsteps, running. I didn't even think. I threw the closet door open and sprinted to the stairwell. My legs felt like jelly, but I ran as fast as I could, taking the stairs 3 at a time. I burst into the lobby at the same time as 2 security guards, who looked just as confused as I felt. They asked me what happened, and I just pointed up at the cameras. We pulled up the footage. What we saw still messes me up to this day. The guy had been in the building for hours. He had entered through a side door at around 11 p.m., a door that should have been locked, but for some reason wasn't. He had been hiding on the 12th floor the entire time. And here's the part that really got to me. After I ran, he didn't go for the stairwell. He went for the elevator, but instead of going down, he went up to the 14th floor, the floor I had just been on. If my radio hadn't gone off, I don't know what would have happened. The police were called, but the guy was gone. They found his backpack in a stairwell on the 16th floor. Inside was 3 loaded pistol mags, zip ties, and a jungle knife. Whoever he was, he came prepared. I quit that job after 2 months. To this day, they have no idea how he got in or what he was planning. But I have a pretty good idea. I work as a medical supply delivery driver, and back in 2019, I was doing long overnight routes between Albuquerque and Texas. It wasn't my dream job or anything, but it paid the bills, and I liked the quiet roads at night. But one night in November changed everything for me. It was November 8th, 2019. I was driving on US Highway 285 near Roswell, New Mexico. If you've ever been on that highway at night, you know how empty it is. No streetlights, barely any cars. Just miles of darkness with nothing but emptiness on both sides. I had been on the road for hours, making good time. It was just past 1 a.m. when I saw red and blue lights flashing in my rearview mirror. I remember thinking it was weird. I wasn't speeding, and this part of the highway was usually empty at night. But I pulled over like I was supposed to. I watched in the mirror as a black Crown Victoria stopped behind me. The driver door opened, and a man stepped out in what looked like a New Mexico State police uniform. Something felt off right away. The guy was tall, broad-shouldered, but his uniform didn't fit right. It was wrinkled, the belt looked loose, and his badge was kind of tilted. The way he walked up to my window didn't feel normal. It was too slow, almost like he was sizing me up. I rolled my window down just enough to hear him. He didn't ask for my license right away, didn't say what I did wrong. He just told me to step out of the vehicle. The way he said it made my stomach drop. He wasn't yelling or acting aggressive, but his tone had this weird authority to it, like he expected me to obey without question. I asked if there was a problem, but he just repeated himself. Step out of the vehicle. Something wasn't right. I had been pulled over before, and real cops don't usually demand you get out unless there's a serious reason. My gut was screaming at me to stay put. I told him I was calling dispatch to confirm. The second I said that, his whole demeanor changed. He moved fast, reaching for my door handle. My brain just went into panic mode. I slammed my foot on the gas. My tires kicked up dirt from the side of the road, and my car shot forward. My heart was pounding. I glanced in the mirror, and that's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. The second I sped off, the flashing lights on his car turned off. No siren, no pursuit lights, just total darkness. And then he started chasing me. I pushed my car as fast as it would go. 80, 90 miles per hour. My hands were shaking. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, barely able to keep my voice steady. I told the dispatcher I was being chased by someone pretending to be a cop. She asked for my location and I blurted it out. Then she said something that made my entire body go numb. There were no police patrols in my area. That was not a real officer. At that moment, I saw headlights in my rearview mirror, gaining on me. The black Crown Victoria was right behind me, staying on my bumper like he was trying to make me lose control. I could see his face in the mirror. No expression, no emotion, just staring at me like I was prey. I was coming up on an intersection where a real police vehicle was supposed to be stationed. I kept telling myself if I could just get there, I'd be safe. But the guy behind me must have realized where I was headed, because suddenly, he swerved onto a dirt road and disappeared into the darkness. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I kept going until I saw flashing lights up ahead, real ones this time. A real officer was waiting at the intersection. I pulled up, shaking so bad I could barely talk. The officer took my statement, called it in, and a search was started right away. They found the abandoned Crown Victoria 20 miles away, near an old farm road. The plates were stolen, the police decals on the side were fake, and the trunk had a roll of duct tape, 5.56mm ammunition, zip ties, and a stun gun. The scariest part? They never found the guy. He just disappeared into the night. I think about that night all the time. How close I was to stepping out of my car. How easy it would have been for him to make me disappear. The only thing that saved me was my gut instinct. I quit that job 2 years later. I haven't driven a night shift since. I used to work the night shift at a logistics warehouse in Chicago, off South Pulaski Road, near an industrial park. It wasn't anything glamorous, just a massive building filled with shelves stacked to the ceiling, cold concrete floors, and the constant hum of forklifts during the day. But at night, it was dead silent. Just me, a few emergency lights, and the sound of my own footsteps echoing down the aisles. This happened on February 14th, 2020. Yeah, Valentine's Day. While most people were out on dates, I was stuck working a double shift. It had been snowing on and off that whole week, and by the time I clocked in around 7 p.m., the streets were nearly empty. Just slushy roads, icy patches, and a wind that felt like it could cut through your jacket. I was the only person scheduled that night. The warehouse handled late shipments from out of state, and my job was to scan them in, organize the pallets, and prep everything for the day crew. Normally, I liked the quiet. No supervisors breathing down my neck, no small talk with coworkers. Just me, my music, and the repetitive beep of the scanner. Around 3 a.m., something weird happened. I was walking past one of the main aisles when I noticed the motion sensor lights at the far end kept flickering on and off. They're supposed to stay off unless someone walks by. At first, I thought it was just a glitch. Maybe the heater blowing the sensor around or a draft from one of the loading dock doors. But when I glanced up at the security monitor in the small office, I swear I saw something, or someone, move between the shelves. Just a quick blur, like a shadow slipping out of view. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired. But after a few minutes, the lights kept flickering. So I grabbed my flashlight and decided to check it out. The warehouse felt different as I walked down the aisles. The air felt colder, heavier. I could hear the faint creak of metal shelves settling, but it sounded off, like there was an extra sound mixed in, a shuffle that wasn't mine. As I got closer to the loading docks, that's when I saw footprints. In the thin layer of snow that had blown in through a door someone had left cracked open. The footprints didn't match mine. I was wearing steel-toe boots. These were from sneakers. My heart started racing. I followed the prints down one of the aisles, flashlight shaking slightly in my hand. That's when I noticed something smeared on the side of one of the metal shelves. At first, I thought it was dirt, but when I got closer, it was a handprint, a fresh one, and it was smeared with blood. I froze. Every instinct in me screamed to get out of there, but I forced myself to move, backing away slowly, flashlight darting around the shadows. As I turned to leave, I caught sight of him. A figure standing at the end of the aisle, maybe 30 feet away. He was wearing dark clothes, a ski mask pulled tight over his face. He didn't move. He just stood there, like he'd been watching me the whole time. I didn't wait. I bolted, sprinting down the aisle, slipping slightly on the cold concrete, my breath coming out in panicked gasps. I made it back to the office and slammed the door shut, locking it with shaking hands. I grabbed the landline to call 911, but the line was dead. That's when I heard the footsteps, getting closer. Then he was at the door, trying the handle, rattling it like he was testing how strong it was. When it didn't budge, he started pounding on it. Not like someone trying to break it down, but like he was toying with me, letting me know he was still there. I was frantically trying to get my phone out of my jacket pocket, fingers fumbling so badly I almost dropped it. I finally got through to 911, whispering as quietly as I could, trying not to let him hear me. I gave them the address, told them someone was inside the warehouse trying to get me. The dispatcher stayed on the line, but the pounding stopped. Silence. No footsteps, no sound at all. When the cops arrived about 15 minutes later, they found me still locked in the office, terrified to even peek outside. The man was gone. They did a sweep of the building and found the door he'd broken in through. There were fresh footprints leading back outside, disappearing into the snow. Around the side of the warehouse, near the dumpsters, they found a small duffel bag. Inside were 3 things: a rusty pair of gardening shears, an old disposable camera with half the film used, and a cracked porcelain doll with no eyes. No fingerprints, no ID, nothing to trace back to anyone. Just those items, like some kind of sick collection. The police think he wasn't there to rob the place. He was there for someone. They never caught him. No clear security footage, no leads. Just the memory of that figure standing at the end of the aisle, watching me like I was already his. I quit that job a week later. I've never worked another night shift since.
We are leaving.